Evening. Welcome to Connect the Six, a bi-weekly segment in which Keep Six highlights key issues within our community. In addition to highlighting the types of people we continuously advocate for, Keep Six brings on professionals capable of exploring the issues we are determined to address. We're blessed today to have three amazing women here to represent Mission Bonita, a youth-centered organization that will be launching a brand new initiative which focuses on providing teachers with guidance and lessons to improve the mental health of children. Before we dig deeper into Mission Bonita's dynamics, let me introduce the three incredible women who are involved with various projects that make up Mission Bonita, including the launch of the new guidebook. We have Lisa Lallouz, Susan Coy, also known as Zan, and Maria Watkins. We'll start off with Lisa. Lisa is a well-known author of the Mission Bonita and Friends children's series. Lisa holds a degree in social work from McGill University and has created numerous programs to help children. Due to her mixed ethnic heritage and background, Lisa has a deep understanding of how important it is to embrace diversity. It is also her first-hand experience with trauma and crisis, which allows her to successfully guide families through whatever challenges they may be facing. Zan, among many of the amazing titles she holds, she's a writer, producer, director, and energy medicine practitioner. In addition to her infectious sense of play, she brings strategic partnership to all her endeavors. Using creativity, Zan teaches children life skills through plays and workshops. Children are coached to be goofy, playful, ridiculous, as well as certified to laugh without reason. Her new STAR system acting method teaches how the divine storyteller inspires a personal and collective transformation. Zan has also been recognized on various media platforms such as CBC, CTV, and Netflix. Maria Watkins holds a master's degree in counseling psychology from the University of Alberta. She's a member of the Canada Counseling and Psychotherapy Association, where she is licensed and registered. Additionally, Maria has extensive postgraduate training in postmodern therapies such as narrative therapy, solution-focused therapy, and harm reduction approaches. For the past 19 years, she has been working as a mental health therapist and a program coordinator, and also a school counselor in both the public and private sector. In her career, she has treated anger, anxiety, violence, and abuse for individuals, couples, families, and groups. Their backgrounds in mental health led them to co-author a teacher's guide on how to incorporate Mission Bonita and Friends into the classroom. So let's get straight into it. I have so many questions regarding Mission Bonita, and Lisa, let's start with you.
Okay.
Hi. So, what motivated you to create this project?
This particular project we'll be talking about is the teacher's guidebook that we had this idea for, and Maria and Zan. Maria authored this guidebook, and it is really, I mean, she'll tell you more about it, but to answer your question, I would say there was a call, an urgent call coming from children and families and teachers, but I think, just across the board to help children with their mental health. I think that for sure the pandemic pushed it. This was happening already, it's been happening for several years, but I would say from the pandemic and up until now, there's really an urgent cry. And so we created this tool to answer that call, because we all have experience, we all have a knowledge, and for example, for myself, the books, the children's books that I've written and the tools that I've created are wonderful to assist children and families. So we needed something that would be really broad reaching. And this is how we came up with the idea of a guidebook that teachers could use in the classroom.
Amazing. So you talked about there's a cry for basically help. Can you tell us exactly what are some of the mental health issues that are being addressed as relates to this guide?
Sure. When when you talk about mental health, everyone freaks out, which is really, we're living in a really extraordinary time, because I don't think any time in history has there been a time where everybody's talking about mental health, everybody's concerned about it, and they're really recognizing, and especially for children, how important mental health is. So I think by talking about this, we're removing the stigma and all those negative connotations and the shame and the discomfort that just goes along with the words. So we could be talking about emotional fitness, emotional or mental health education. So by doing this, we are creating emotionally fit and prepared and equipped children that are able to deal with all kinds of challenges. So mental health challenges can be anything from a child getting bullied, feeling scared or worried or stressed about school, dealing with a parent's divorce, or, and such. The things that, almost every one of us have experienced. And then there are more serious issues that they could be dealing with, and especially since the pandemic, like anxiety, etc. So this guidebook and the tools that we've created will certainly, they're not meant to replace a psychologist, but they're meant to be an additional support to teachers and counselors, and on its own, for the most part, are very, very therapeutic and educational. So we're very excited.
So for each mental health problem that a person may face, there's definitely, I feel like, different approaches that needs to be taken when considering each of those. What would you say is a therapeutic approach that is taken in the guidebook?
So in the guidebook, Maria will address that because it's very, it's clinical, it's educational. Her techniques are brilliant. So they are based on the children's series. The books and the media that are in the guidebook are really, they're entertaining. It was created, they're really an artistic expression. Yes, I have my degree in social work, and obviously you see that in the work, but they were meant to entertain and delight children through a process, through a journey of healing and dealing with a problem and a challenge. So that was where I was coming from. So of course you have therapeutic techniques embedded in there, but hopefully none that the children will necessarily, it's like the medicine, it's like, and it's the journey and the fun and that we're really leading the kids through. But I'll leave Maria to talk about the good stuff.
This first guidebook is specifically dealing with fears, stress, and worries. And Maria will explain the bridge she's created from the entertainment education that's in the books to, the clinical techniques now within the guidebook that work with what we created.
Beautiful. So I just have one more question for Lisa. Have you guys received any feedback so far regarding?
For the teacher's guidebook, the feedback so far is fantastic, for the very fact that there is nothing else like it out there. So everyone is really super excited because I think it's really the first of its kind. If I could give you a comparison, think of, let's say, Sesame Street. So if Sesame Street, which I'm sure they must have, not necessarily a guidebook, but literature or materials for classroom. So it's something like that, but specifically not teaching math and science, but mental health. So it's really very unique, the first of its kind, and we're getting really only positive feedback and excitement. So it puts the pressure a little bit on, but in a good way, because I think we have something fantastic that the teachers and the kids are going to love. And, and essentially our goal is to give, the community, we've created this initiative, this fundraising initiative to sponsor the teachers who are working in marginalized communities with at-risk children, because we want to make sure that they have access, to these therapeutic tools, these tools that will turn them into empowered little beings, that are able to bring to the table incredible knowledge and abilities in dealing with their challenges. So that's really very, very important to us, and we're really excited. So that's the feedback. In general, everyone's really excited about the project.
I, for one, am definitely highly impressed with it, just because I believe in school, a lot of teachers aren't, for the most part, growing up myself, a lot of teachers weren't as compassionate when it came to mental health. And I feel like with a guidebook like this would definitely start the conversation, pushing a better stance on that. So yeah, I for sure can see this.
Absolutely. Well, they might not have had a lot of people, you'd be surprised, they're afraid. I remember when I was actually teaching, I was very many years ago, I was teaching in daycare, and we didn't know what to say, what we could say. We were afraid to speak. And I think it's still that way, that, we didn't want to cross lines. Oh, this is for the social worker. Oh, this is for the parents. So some of it is fear-based, whereas teachers, it's not their place. Or, even as adults, even myself as a practitioner, I don't always have the words or know what to say when someone comes to me and say, oh, my pet just died, or my husband's leaving me. So we're giving them the words. we're holding their hand through a fun, entertaining, educational process, and literally, giving them all the words and teaching also to the children what they can say, what they can do, which, as you pointed out, is really the basis. I'm a believer that we can teach compassion, or at least we can bring it out. And I've seen it. So yeah, to your point, yes, that's very great. We hope so.
Stories by themselves, without the guide, there's medicine in those stories. Right? And they're fun. The kids, it's like a spoonful of sugar to let the medicine go down. So the kids don't even know they're getting the medicine. And the books address diversity. So it's not just one racial group, it's all kinds of racial groups in the stories. The therapy is also, narrative therapy comes from marginalized communities, because Michael White, the creator of narrative therapy, noticed that the Aboriginal people in Australia were not getting better from cognitive behavioral therapy and traditional conventional therapies. And so this therapy comes from the marginalized community. And it is interesting in separating people from problems and asking questions to help people notice they're competent, they're skillful, they have knowledge, but sometimes problems hide these skills. And so this is a very different kind of therapy that comes from marginalized communities and is empowering to them.
Okay, so I want to get more into the project, right? So I want to find out, how is it that you, Zan, how did you get involved in this project, and why did you feel like this is something you needed to be a part of?
How did I get involved? When I met Lisa, I consider myself a divine storyteller, and I've always thought of story as a transformational spiritual process. It gets us to look at ourselves, it gets us to journey and ask questions about ourselves, and inspires us to take steps forward and, expand our consciousness and improve our relationship with life itself. And so you can imagine when I came across, well, first of all, when I met Lisa, I don't know, some Mohawks grandmothers called me woman of magical dreams. So I love people to live their dream. And Lisa is such an incredible creative being. So I have always been her cheerleader to let her know the world needs what you do and what you know. And in her first 3 books, she's dealing with death, she's dealing with divorce, she's dealing with bullying. And it's fun and it's entertaining. Who does that? You know? And it's dealing with consciousness. But it's woven into the book. You're in the book. I'm reading the book, but I'm in the book. The book is transforming me. The book is asking me questions. I'm included in the story. I am part of the story. So that struck me, and I was so honored to be asked to co-author her 4th book. And I brought the Honorable Jean Augustine. I'm a collector of wisdom and genius. I want us all to be working together, unity and diversity, helping to make change one story at a time, changes one child at a time. And so I brought the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine. She collaborated with us. We co-authored the book, The Case of the Girl Who Had to Be Perfectly Perfect. And yeah, it's a kid's book, but I had 68-year-olds saying to me, I mean, a great Black leader, Dr. Omar Wali Satterwhite, saying to me, this book changed my life. You asked me questions. I had to think about where I was going and what I was doing. I teared up when I was reading this book. And, you know, it also works for 10-year-olds. So from the beginning, I mean, as Maria said, we knew as conscious people, there's healing. There's healing, good medicine in these stories that are going at next level. And then to see Happy Hills in the book and the illustrations, wow, you're struck with awe just from that. And so we knew that this was a solution. And of course, it needed a guidebook to just take out the medicine that's there and make it even more spelled out in strategic steps so that questions are asked. And you're going through a process just by the questions that, you know, Maria's created, and then all the fun, creative, you know, kind of calming techniques or brain breaks and, you know, bringing in energy medicine things into it. So you have ways of changing your energy in 5 minutes so that you can be more relaxed, so your emotions can be calm, so that you can be ready to learn, you know, and healing all the way. She's just sharing your story and noticing what Maria is brilliant at. And, you know, I've seen her do it with, I happened to have the privilege of overhearing her working with someone who was having a problem of nail biting. So she gets the people to name the problem, you know, but you're not the problem. What happens when, what has nail biting done for your life? Oh, well, it's got me grounded. It's got my fingers bleeding. It's got me. And, you know, and have you ever had nail biting coming along and wanting to take over, but you didn't do it? So she gets people right away from their own life experience, finding how they have conquered or they have won over, you know what I mean? And as well, they have the experiences of the characters in the book, because each of the characters are finding solutions. And so you end up with this thing that makes you do this critical change that every human has to do to be a hero in their life. As Joseph Campbell says, we're all on. Story is that hero's journey where we all have to embrace the shadow things and then learn to stand up to fear and choose love. And so we make that transition from why is this happening to me to how is this happening for me? That's what the book does. That's what the guidebook does. And then we stop judging ourselves. We learn to love ourselves. We learn to make a change, to see how no matter what's going on, there's a shift in my attitude. I could try something. I could learn something. And then the kids got the foundation for being empowered. We didn't have that. Nobody is doing what this guidebook is.
Because I teach in schools, and they have programs like, I forget the names, but they have counseling programs that you could do, but it's a lot of work. You have to read the book, then you have to figure out how you're going to teach it, and you have to write the things. Whereas this is a plug and play. You don't have to create any lesson. You plug it into your smart board. Everything's projected on the screen, and you go through the slides. Everything that you need are on the slides. There is nobody that's made a course like this for teachers. And the reason schools do not have the money for counseling, but teachers have problems in their classroom with behavior, and they cannot teach the kids. So you could use this plug and play program without any preparation or very little preparation to help. You could use it in the health class, in the English class, in drama. You can use it to teach kids how to find their competence and how to live with pride and joy and value in schools. And there is no program like that. They do have it's called social emotional learning programs, but it's a workbook. You have to read it, and then you have to create your lessons from scratch. And it's a lot of work for teachers. And so this one, no work. All you need to have in your classroom are some markers, crayons, paper that kids have, maybe some scissors, and maybe chart paper and sticky notes. That's it. So it's not a huge cost.
Sure. And it's interesting that you say that, but what I wanted to ask, is for something like that, so to become as successful as I believe it will, do you have, what's the support system like? You mentioned Dr. Jean Augustine, like what are the other support system behind that you guys see helping?
Lisa needs to answer that, because you not believe all the support that these kids go with Mission Bonita. So Lisa, you need to talk to that about all the media that you use.
I wanted to mention one thing that, it's very hard for people to believe that the solutions are as simple as they are. These problems seem so huge. These challenges seem so huge. Mental health, children, crisis. And when you come and say to somebody, well, we can fix this and we can fix it easily and affordably, people don't believe it. So this is what's so important, that we have to, I keep using Sesame Street. I'm a huge fan of PBS. I'm such a huge fan of Sesame Street, because the consciousness behind it was, they were created for children who did not have access to kindergarten. This is back in the day, so I don't want to date myself, but children who could not afford to go to kindergarten were at a disadvantage. They'd get into grade 1, and all the other kids had all this private education. And so Sesame Street, besides its diversity, and it was incredible, but that was the essence of it, was to teach these things so that kids who were at home, their TV was their babysitter. I was one of those kids, would come in and know the alphabet and know all these amazing things. And so what ended up happening, it was so incredible and vast. It touched hundreds of children, not one at a time. It wasn't this complicated problem that was going to cost billions of dollars that we can't solve. And so here was a fantastic way, through art, through education, through literature, that we can do this, and it doesn't, and we can do it together, and we can do it easily, and it doesn't have to cost a lot of money. It doesn't cost a lot of money. So I just wanted to mention that, because we had touched on that 2 minutes ago, and that this is something solvable, fixable, and very affordable. So when you give this to the teacher, you're touching her life, her own personal life. You're empowering her. You're touching the lives of the 30 students who will then become these awakened, compassionate, empowered beings who know how to approach challenges with tools. So it's very far reaching. So I just wanted to mention that. And the support, yes, we have tremendous support.
Right.
And she has, kids can write in to Miss Bonita and get a letter back. Kids have online web series.
Yes.
So and of course the classroom and the teacher, the adults and the classroom are their support. And then of course there's media and online stuff that Lisa has that also support children.
So we're building our support right now with approaching superintendents to get this in the school, and community leaders, because this also works in community settings, after school programs. Therapists can use it for individual or group therapy. So some of those community centers and mental health places. And also we're starting a campaign with GoFundMe to actually sponsor teachers, so that we, through when you sponsor a teacher, 30 books go to the kids and the teacher gets the digital program. And so it now doesn't even cost the school anything. So we're on a big campaign to do this sponsorship. So that will be a huge support for getting it out there, and people will be able to go to the GoFundMe page and help, and
of course the books and the guide, you can do it with teachers, as Suzanne said, community leaders, even parents. So it can teach parents how to help their kids. Because I used to get calls from parents when I was in the schools about, how do I help my child? How do I help my child overcome, horrific anxiety? And so you're giving the support through the books, through the teacher's guide. It tells adults how they can help, gives them some strategies to help their children.
I had a quick question in regards to the children and how this is, I guess, directed to Maria, how it empowers the kids in their performance, right? Because if they have access to this, I can understand where it might either possibly improve for those who don't have access to resources. Outside.
Yeah. So how is it empowering? Well, it's the way that the whole of the guidebook is. By the way, I wrote the lessons, but Lisa and Suzanne have spent hours collaborating with me, editing it, adding things. So it's not just my project; it's their project too. So how is it empowering me? Is the type of counseling that is in the book that it's narrative therapy is a critique of conventional ways of doing therapy, because many therapists saw that it wasn't really helping Black people or Aboriginal people or Indigenous people, that they only ever felt more criticized because they weren't measuring up to certain. You have to realize that most conventional therapies were made by rich white men. And so it didn't always address the cultural milieu of other races. So this therapy does, and it's empowering. It's designed to extend the healing approaches presented in the story books and in the video series, to extend it into more therapeutic ways through questioning. And the way that it empowers people is that the questions are set up to separate children from problems. You are not the problem. The person is not the problem. The problem is the problem. And by just doing that separation, it opens up space for children to notice they have some influence over problems. There are times when the problems have taken them down, but there are always times when they've stood up to problems. So that's the first thing it does. It empowers children to know they are not the problem. And so that's called narrative therapy. And then there are questions that are used to ask kids in the lessons and to notice what are your skills, your competences, your knowledge that have helped you to stand up to problems. So it makes it clear that you're not always under the influence of a problem, that you have power too. And no one's telling you you have power. You are thinking about your own life and noticing, oh, I didn't do it that day. How did that happen? That's not magic. That's actually a skill. So that is how narrative therapy is empowering, because all the knowledge comes from the children. And children who I've worked with have never been spoken to in that way, in which they are the experts of their lives. Most therapy advises and celebrates or uses rewards and punishment. Narrative therapy does not do that. So that's how it's empowering.
And are you saying to most therapies come in as, I'm the expert on you?
Yes.
This does not do that. Yeah.
Yeah, narrative therapy is collaborative. So it's decentered from the therapist.
So you talk a lot about narrative therapy, right? Is there any other therapeutic approach that is taken in the book, or is just
Are there any other therapies?
therapeutic?
Well, there's cognitive behavioral things and mindfulness things in the storybooks.
Yes.
Yeah, so they're so you can present them in a way as an experiment. Would you like to experiment with choosing happy thoughts over worrying thoughts? That's a cognitive behavioral strategy, but it's asked in a narrative way. Would you like to try an experiment? Because sometimes maybe kids are at a loss of thinking of a time they had some influence over a power, over a problem. So maybe you would say, would you like to try an experiment and see if it helps you shrink the problem? And let me know the next time we come back together. So there are cognitive behavioral ideas, but they're put in ways that are set up as experiments and are empowering to the client.
Maybe you could talk about your like the name the problem approach. That's also an incredibly important.
Yeah, to make the problem visible, that it's not you. It's not. So most of what's happened is the culture, our culture, the dominant discourses of the culture get internalized into our bodies. And we start to think it's inside of us, that we are the depression, we are the anxiety. And what narrative therapy is, it's trying to take it outside of you and notice that, no, you have some influence over the power. It's not always, it's the culture, the society that makes these ideas internalized. So one of the ways to externalize it and take it outside of your body is to notice, if you could give this problem a name, what would you name it? So there was a little girl that had problems with peeing, so she would call it sneaky pee. So at school, so we would talk about how to stand up to sneaky pee. And stuff like, so we would name the problem and we'll notice times when she did not listen to sneaky pee and she was able to stand up to it. So the first thing to externalize is to name the problem and then to ask questions that notice what is the problem doing to your life? How does it influence you? How does it infect you? What does it get you thinking about yourself? What does it get you doing that you hate? So then you can be mad at the problem and not yourself. So that's what I mean about taking the problems outside of the people and having some space to notice your power over the problem, and sometimes how the problem tries to trick you and get it to do its dirty work.
Yeah, and I think it also helps these kids to feel seen too, because a lot of the times, a lot of kids, I'm going back to myself because like this is actually something I'm really passionate about. So for the most part, I had a conversation the other day and I talked about how a lot of the times people they listen, but they don't listen to you. So it's amazing that you brought up.
And you have to listen in narrative therapy because you can't ask a question unless you heard the expert knowledge coming from the child. So you have to really listen. And I actually take extensive notes to write their ideas down so I can go back and ask them, how did they do that? So you have to really listen.
I think
go ahead.
I just want to say the byproduct of this guidebook is that kids end up loving themselves more.
Mm-hmm.
They end up walking away with self-love. Yeah.
Well, the books, the children are always going on an adventure to help the child with the problem. And so they're looking sort of like a treasure hunt. And then at the end, of course, they realize the treasure was within. That because Miss Bonita actually doesn't know anything. They write letters to her, please help me, I need help with this. And she has no clue, which is sort of, for me, was interesting because it's I don't want to say it's my commentary on the all-knowing practitioner or social worker, but I wanted that to really, I wanted to make a point of that, meaning, that no one knows, no one holds the answer but yourself. And it's about finding the right people to go on the journey with and to do the therapy or the exploration. And that's really the idea of empowering. And to be honest, and I think this is very relevant with Keep Six, an organization like Keep Six, why I started all of this and in this way was the frustration I had of seeing that, first of all, for so many reasons, these kids in general don't get to decide, I want to see a therapist, or I need help, or I have a mental health problem. Then many children have come from families like myself where this was not talked about, mental health. You don't even say that word. It's so taboo. It meant you're crazy, you're evil, nobody's gonna, it had horrible connotations. And so children of immigrants, low income families who don't have, access, or it's not part of, culture, it's culturally not acceptable, and also safety issues. This is something that, no one talks about. I know that personally, you had mentioned in my bio that my family had fallen into crisis. I can tell you that I was sweating every day when I was sending my little one to school, praying God she wasn't going to say, repeat, whatever had happened or what she had overheard, or, I was very, very concerned. And the last thing I felt like doing was booking an appointment. I was lucky that I had the means to have private therapy where I knew everything was confidential. People don't know that, and people don't always have money for that. And there are safety issues. It isn't acceptable in every family or in every community to go tell your private business to an outsider. And it is dangerous. It can be dangerous for some people. And this is something that has to be talked about and addressed for if we really want to give meaningful help and solve problems. We have to not fight against it. Just here's a solution, create solutions that allow for accessibility.
100%. And you mentioned low-income communities and the same not having access, and how that also relates to Keep Six coming into, right? And I wanted to mention that that's one of the reasons why we sought after a grant that played into our music program. So now we have like a mental health thing going in Keep Six that does the same thing. Because kids need outlets, and kids are the future, so kids are the focus, I like to say. But yeah.
So some of the solutions are actually social counseling, where you register your child in a swimming program or a karate program or a music program so that they can find their passion. Yeah. And the books and the guidebook demystifies what therapy is, that anybody could do it. It doesn't really need an expert, because you can be the expert of your own life. And you can read the books and the guidebook and maybe notice that you have some powers over your own problems.
And I love that, because it's kind of what Lisa says, how therapy and like mental health, there's a stigma to it. And I guess this book kind of pushes that stigma away and lets kids realize that it's okay that this is happening, and there are ways to deal with it that you won't, like, people can say what they're saying, but ultimately it happens to all of us at the end of the day. But we've talked about, go ahead.
I was just saying, it's that infectious spirit of adventure. If I don't think we in general equate therapy and healing with an adventure. But when you take an adventure approach, then it's like playing with the cat in the hat. It's something we wouldn't want to do it, right? So I think it's taps into that need for adventure that all humans have, and that need to learn, and really that need to change and find new ways.
Also, I wanted to say that healing too. I think healing is constant as well. So I wanted to mention that if it is you get if there's a bump in the road, if there's a bump in the road, it doesn't mean that healing has stopped. So that's just something that I had to learn recently too. I wanted to put out there. So healing is constant. Yeah.
Absolutely. There'll never be a time in your life where there won't be, there's bumps, there's potholes, and then this is the journey of life, right?
Yeah, this is a classroom, right? We're being trained, and problems give us that training. I mean, if you wanted a good trainer, you wouldn't. I mean, I remember when I used to think, well, I'll just go to the gym. And then, someone would come up and say, do I need to get an ambulance? Because I was having a nap on a stretching mat. And I realized, no, I don't have to just go there. I actually have to do something. So I'm just saying that, the guidebook and the books, you're doing something. You're doing some healing.
So we kind of went back to the classroom. So let's get back into the classroom. We talked a lot about the kids. This is a guidebook for teachers. I wanted to know, how does the guidebook support teachers facing the challenges of working with at-risk kids?
That's a good question. It supports teachers because it's easy peasy, zero preparation, or 5 minutes of preparation, where you have to put the kids in a group, or you might have to make sure they have paper and pencils. So zero preparation, easy peasy, plug and play program with a set of lessons that scaffold the person, the youth, from the ways of problems, and step by step takes them out to unfamiliar ways, unknown ways, but possibilities of change and preference. So that's what the book does. The teachers don't have to know anything about therapy. The questions go step by step from that place to look for competence in children. All the teachers need are paper, pencils, pens, markers, crayons, and some sticky notes, maybe a chart paper. That's it. The guidebook is a digital lesson or a hard copy. So it's both. And in the guidebook, every exercise, so it's a lot of hands-on project learning, collaborating kinds of fun activities. So it's not the teacher standing there and speaking. It's putting the learning into the hands of the children by giving them projects to do, and then to present back to the class, or to do brain gym activities, or to do stretching activities, so that they're not just sitting, they have to move their bodies too. So that's how it helps teachers. 98% of teacher preparation is embedded in the digital lesson. And the only extra groundwork, again, the teachers need is to organize the kids in small groups sometimes, and have a basic set of art supplies that most classrooms have. And teachers can use a guidebook in their health class to teach emotional regulation and mental health, their drama class or language arts class. So that's how it really helps teachers. It's no work for them. And if they're having trouble in the classroom with kids calling out and getting into fights at recess, this is a way to address those things that happen at the playground or in the classroom for everybody. So it helps teach kids be more regulated and easier to teach. So that's what I would say.
Are there any plans to pitch this to academic curriculum? Do you see these in school?
Yes. We definitely have those plans. We're in the process, and we're hoping that it will be well received and successful, that there will be that demand, most definitely.
Mm-hmm. And another thing is, everybody ends up knowing one great Canadian who changed the face of race and education in our country, the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine. They will have a piece of her life and, know about who she is. And that's a good thing. I think every kid should know.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know that Dr. Jean Augustine was the one that created Black History Month. I think you told me that the other day. I was totally surprised about that.
I did not know that. Good to know.
Yes. Well, in the teacher's guidebook, we include obviously the Kindle version for whoever's just going digital. Again, because it's very important for us to make everything as accessible as possible to everyone. And obviously we're doing the fundraising to try to get as many children to have the actual physical copy of the beautiful book that's inspired by the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine. It's a beautiful book. And that's part of the lesson it's one of the books in the guidebook for the children.
Yeah, her whole book, that whole book, The Case of the Girl Who Had to Be Perfectly Perfect, is used to explore helping kids deal with fears, worries, and stress, which is a theme that the characters and perfectionism. Well, yeah, that it's a theme that runs through that book, that many of the different characters are dealing with different fears and stress and perfectionism. So the whole book is, and at the end of the book, there's a little, there's an information or a little bio about who Jean is and some of her many accomplishments. So
and the kids are supported by their teachers, but also in the lessons it tells the kids that they can write Miss Bonita about their successes or the troubles they're having. So that's another way of giving kids follow-up support.
And this idea, Maria, that you're not alone. Other people have that problem.
You're not alone.
You have to deal with this. And what Maria was saying about questions, I heard Einstein say something about that if you had an hour to solve a problem, that was going to, save the world, he would spend like 58 minutes coming up with the right questions, because when you ask the right question, you have all the answers. So that's a skill, that Maria, you ask the right questions, that gives the steps of the built-in process that the kids go through because of that.
Well, that's interesting what you all pointed out. Just to my last thing that I wanted to mention was I asked that question. I remember thinking, how can I help as many kids for as little money? What is the root? I said, well, how do I help teachers and help kids? It's a different help. And I said, well, suffering, the root of most suffering is what? Because suffering, we can't take away suffering. There's always going to be death, divorce, grief, loss. This is life. So the root of it in my professional experience, working with children and in my own life, I realized most of the time it's the loneliness. It's the feeling that you have this problem and you're the only one with it, or you're to blame and no one else has this problem, or it could be I'm all alone with this problem and I don't have anybody to share it with or to support me with it. And that is ultimately, that's the suffering. Because I remember one boy shared with me, he said his parents he had terrible, real tragedies in his life. And he said, it always stuck out with me. He said, it's not so much tragedies, the divorce that happened, or that it was that I had no one to share it with. I didn't have a support system. I felt alone. So this guidebook is empowering teachers in that they're not alone in their classroom anymore, and the children are no longer alone in, if they're experiencing this challenge. It creates this community approach.
A family. Your
Yeah,
family in your classroom.
and along with that, what happens is, kids starting internalizing being hard on themselves, judging themselves because of the situation or the problem that they're in. So ultimately, in this process, if you start to learn how to become your own source of love, and get a handle on how changing even your thoughts and feelings can change what you experience. So that's built in here, because ultimately one tool we all need is how to be our own best friends.
Yeah.
Impressed. I'm definitely interested in getting a copy now. Like, it sounds amazing. Like, and I think even though you guys specifically are focused on the youth, I feel like grown people can even take a look at it, because I feel like we're all kids at heart that never had. Yeah. So definitely, I feel like even grown adults could pick the book up too, and I for sure will.
I think so. We could do a group therapy with it, adults.
Yeah.
As we come to a close, I just have one more question. So you're here on Connect the Six, and you're working with Keep Six. How do you think Keep Six can help to support Mission Bonita?
Number one is the exposure you're giving everybody right now. That's how Keep Six helps the guidebook and the stories, is by talking about this where other people can see it. You're exposing it.
I'll definitely talk about it more and bring it up to church for sure, because I love this book so far. I haven't read it, but I'm super intrigued. But thank you so much for sharing this new initiative.
Thank you. Another thing is, we can have one of your community leaders form a group and do the process with the kids you work with.
Yeah, for sure.
And you could lead it, Kerry-Ann.
Sorry?
You would have the competence to lead it.
Yeah.
Lead the session.
Kerry-Ann.
It demystifies counseling.
True.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this. Definitely right up my alley. It was amazing. And we are just as excited to see how this book will take off. Mission Bonita will continue to get our support here at Keep Six. And yeah, so thank you so much. That is all we have for you guys on this week's Connect the Six. Make sure to check out Mission Bonita's social platforms, which will be linked. So stay informed and keep up to date on their newest initiative. Keep a lookout for our next Instagram post to see what we will be discussing next. Once again, thank you, ladies, and see you guys in 2 weeks for the next.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.